上一个单元我们讲到了如何从对方得到有意义的反馈，今天呢，我们就来换个位置，来讨论我们该如何提供好的建议。So, let's dive right in. Hello, 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast. I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to Executive Plus Podcast. In a previous episode, we talked about how to get more constructive feedback from someone else. Now, let's flip the script and talk about if someone asks you for feedback, or if you feel someone is looking for feedback, how you can go about ensuring that A, they actually want your opinion, and B, framing your opinion in a way that is useful to them.
Right. I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you have kids, you are probably the victim of unsolicited advice from other aunties or moms or grandmothers out there, right? 有的时候我们带那种很小的小孩子在外面的时候，一定都会有一些大婶啊、大妈的会经过，然后就会提供他们一些人生的经验。So that happens a lot. Now, so I often think about, okay, after we're in this workforce for about 10 years, we often feel like, hey, we've been through stuff. We know something. We're going to offer some advice. If you see like freshmen or people in their 20s are making some mistakes, or maybe they're going to make some mistakes, I want to stop them from doing that. I wanted to help them out. 但是我就会 question 说，这个时候我是不是也是那个大婶、那个大妈，会提供他们可能目前所不需要的一些 advice.
Right. So in English, we have that phrase, when you carry a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so it's the same thing as like when you have certain experiences and you're like, I'm going to share this. Yeah. Then you just start throwing that advice at everyone. And a lot of people do that without considering whether it's relevant to the person, whether the other person even wants the advice. But a lot of people who are senior and more experienced, both in age and wisdom, sometimes just will go around there just throwing advice at every little thing that they can see because they feel like, I have this experience.
Yeah.
But today we want to walk you through a few stages or a few steps when it comes to giving advice and to give more effective advice.
那第一个步骤呢, actually, it's a tough one, I would say. You need to check if this person actually wants advice or not.
In the last episode, we talked about if you want feedback, you should be explicit about what feedback you want and the guided questions. But sometimes someone will be talking about something, and especially when we connect it back to weak ties, if this is an acquaintance, maybe they're just making small talk, right? They're just trying to find a way, maybe it's complain about something or make a joke about something as a way to break the ice or build a connection. But too often I'll see someone make this kind of comment and then again, an older person will just start dropping advice bombs on them. Whereas I don't think that's what they're going for. I think they're just trying to make friendly banter. So you definitely have to check, does this person need advice? Is this person just making small talk? Or a lot of times if it's a close colleague or especially for friends or family members, sometimes they just need someone to listen.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when people are feeling a little bit down, they had something uncomfortable happen to them. 他们并不一定马上就想找一个解决的方案. They just wanted to talk about it and be a listener if that's what they really want at that point. Don't give advice, please.
Maybe you can just sympathize first or empathize first. Like, oh, that sounds really tough. I'd be happy to share some of my experiences, but if you just need a friendly ear or someone to listen, then just let me know.
Yeah. Now, if you are sure that this person actually want advice, 那我们接下来呢，我们就可以使用我们的 STAR method. 那如果听过我们所有关于 interview 单元的部分的话， you're familiar with the STAR method.
And what this comes down to is, we talk about STAR, situation, task, action, result in terms of like your resume or interview. But this is great because when it comes to giving advice, a context is always important.
Yeah.
Right? I think one of the biggest issues most people run into when receiving unsolicited or just getting advice from other people is the context of what's going on or when this is really important. And what STAR does is it helps you outline all of those pieces, right? The situation is really the context of what's going on. The task, like what did you have to overcome? How are you empathizing with this person's problem that they have told you about? What action did you take and what was the result? Like you're giving them a full understanding, not just being like, oh, you should do this.
Yeah.
You're like, well, why should I do that? Right? Well, in my opinion or my experience, it's important for you to do this. Be like, well, I don't know anything about where you're coming from.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of young people really prefer it and appreciate that. 至少要给人家一个 context, 让他知道说 OK, 你的经验跟我的经验是有哪一些部分是能够相关的。所以你的 advice 是如何我要怎么样来去运用你的 advice. So I think it's really important to lay that out first and to provide that context. And after you provide that context, you can just say, hey, so this is what works for me. So for you, I may suggest this.
A lot of times people also end their advice at be like, well, here's what I would do. But with a different context, with a different background experience, that may not be executable by the other person. They may not have the resources or the connections or the network that you had to do this thing. At the end of the advice, reframing it around what's important to them. So it'd be like, if I was in your shoes, here's a few things I would think about. Or even just ending by going, okay, that was my experience, but something you need to keep in mind is I had ABC resource, right? So you may need to get those first before you go after my suggestions. So the last step in our 3 stages of giving advice is that you can actually just offer other resources. Sometimes it's not your experience alone that can be the most helpful. Sometimes it can just be something that really helped you that they can get their own interpretation out of it, right? So this is why like offering book recommendations or offering resource recommendations can be so powerful because you may have learned something from this and gotten something out of it. They may also learn, but it may not be exactly your takeaway.
Yeah, exactly. And 我觉得这个部分它很重要的其他一点是你提供了一个时间跟空间让对方去想去吸收 So I think everyone needs time to absorb information and to reflect on how that's going to apply to them and if they actually wanted to take that advice or not. So offering other resources really helps them to really think about how they're going to apply that or if they're actually going to implement that. 我觉得对于很多人来讲这个 space 是非常重要的 Again, like what Nick said, it's a lot of times it's not just our opinions. They can go and gather all different types of opinions first and then, decide what they wanted to do.
But one thing that I again want to emphasize in particular for this piece is it is good to give someone a context for what's going on when you give this other advice. So like if you're like, okay, you really should read this book, but maybe you read that book like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? There's probably something going on 20 years ago that is different either in your life or in the world that made some of this advice useful for you, right? Or again, a lot of times other resources may be connected to a specific time. Now, the best situation if there's like some kind of resource that's evergreen, but it's always helpful to give some kind of context of where did this other resource come into play and at what time in your life or what's going on. So back to that step 2, STAR is a great way or giving any kind of context.
Yeah, I just have one small thing to add. Speaking of books, okay, I had people recommending me books all the time. 但是我觉得提供人家一个书单其实 it feels really heavy sometimes. 因为要念一本书实在花很久的时间。It's like, oh, you should read this book. You should read that book. Okay, I'm not a super quick reader. 每次听到这种就觉得 Oh my God, I have to read another book to get the answer. 所以我觉得如果你真的要提供人家书单好了 Here's another way you can do it. 如果你有这一本书，你直接 highlight 或者你直接来就是去 specify, again, be more specific, 就说从几页到几页，这个是你可以来参考的地方。Don't give them like, read the whole thing.
Right, maybe there's just a section. Or the other thing that actually both Andrew and I agree on recently after reading a lot of books is that a lot of times if it's, let's say, a business book, go find out if the author did an interview. Like 90% of the time, if the author did an interview, they probably hit a lot of the key points. I mean, this may be a hot take or people may agree with this. Like for me, I do not think Simon Sinek's books are worth reading.
Oh my God.
I think that, I think he's a great speaker.
Yeah.
I think his key ideas come out in his talks. And every book that I have read of his, I've been like, well, that was just your TED Talk. This is not very, I didn't learn anything new. I would just recommend that if you're going to throw a book at someone, maybe go find out if that author did like a TED Talk or an interview. A lot of them will give speeches at universities that's like an hour long that someone can just listen to in the background. And it's like 90% of the book. And most of the business books that I read, the first thing I do is be like, should I buy this or should I go find out if they did an interview? And most of the time when they did an interview, it'd be like, oh, I don't need to buy this.
Yeah, I think that's, you will get like the gist of it from any talk and any interview.
Right. And then if something resonates with you, then go buy the book.
Yeah,
but if you're just like, watch the talk and be like, sounds good, then you probably don't need it. All right. We hope that you enjoyed this. Remembering the 3 steps to giving better quality feedback. Step 1, check if they actually want feedback. Or you can even check what they want feedback about. Be specific on that side. Step 2, frame out your advice from your own experience, but be sure to give the context. Things like STAR method are wonderful this. And finally, offer other resources or other things that people can go seek advice, whether it's other people or other things like books, videos, etc. that meant something to you and might be good for them. We hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.